Sorry, I completely forgot the name of the podcast. I've been awake for like half an hour.
Sticky floors, come on.
Sorry. Oh God, great start. Hi, welcome to the Sticky Floor podcast. This week, I am joined with Daniel
Hi.
and Callum,
How's it going?
and we will be discussing Nowhere from Gregg Araki's Teen Apocalypse trilogy. So what are your guys' initial thoughts?
Before we start, I remember you saying that Gregg Araki is your favourite director.
No, he's one of my favorite directors.
Ah, okay.
I wouldn't say he was like top tier because there's some questionable things, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure. I realised this film's a dark comedy, but I thought for a longest time, I thought, is this a spoof? Is this like something like this is a spoof of what people in the 90s teenagers was like, just taking drugs and piercings and having lots of sex and having hair dyed all funny colours, and you know what I mean? It was almost like an edgy Bill and Ted.
Yeah. It's actually a pretty good description of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite excited when I first started watching it because there's like not that many queer movies that aren't about being queer, you know? It seems like all of them just have to in some way, you can have a gay character without the story being about, you know, him transitioning and being gay or whatever. Not transitioning, bad word to use. But two of my favourite films of all time are The Green Ray and Dazed and Confused, like just classic hangout films. So the first 20 minutes of the film, say that again.
What was the first one you said there?
The Green Ray. It's a Eric Romer film.
I don't know that one.
Brilliant. I was really excited for the first 20 minutes. I thought it was going to be like a kind of punk version of a hangout movie, like a grounded one, a realistic one. Then we can get more into it, but an alien shows up, and that's when the movie lost me, and I was quite disappointed.
Okay.
I didn't actually give an opinion on the film, any thoughts on the film. I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was too invested in its own style to sort of really kind of draw me in. And I realise it's meant to be very loose with its plotting and that, but I don't know. I just found the dialogue a bit too irritating for it to really hold my attention.
Interesting, I personally see it as more of a satire than anything. I mean, if you look at it in the time it was made in the kind of like mid-90s, it's like a clear depiction of a satirical comment on not just like how young people are portrayed in the media at that time, but how we as a society view young people as well outside of media. But it's also a campy, kind of nonsensical, dark comedy nightmare as well, which is why I like it, because it is a bit shit. Like, there's no denying that. It is a bit shit. But I think that makes the message more poignant because it's not coming from like a high budget like position or somewhere with like, you know, it doesn't feel too orchestrated. It is very much just like a kind of like essentially just pointing out how laughable like our perception of young people can be in society, especially at that time. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think
that's
it
pretty
was
fair.
that. I was going to say, I think it, like, I was confused to whether or not it was a parody, and like I didn't know what Big Greg's intentions were, whether or not he was trying to take the piss out of the teenagers or whether he was trying to take the piss out of like adults, you know, perception of teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said that you thought it was a bit shit, do you think that was it's deliberately a bit shit, or do you think it was just?
I mean, it's deliberately camp.
Yeah.
Because it's quite camp. It's deliberately camp, but you know, there are elements of it that I do find either they could have been worked on, or they were unnecessary, or they were they just cheapened the feel. And I feel like that's because it's very early on in his filmmaking career. So it shows his kind of like naivety towards the whole thing, and also his just like kind of like overwhelming like kind of needs to get it out there at the same time.
So do you think that... On you go, Callum.
I was going to ask, so this is the third in the Teen Apocalypse trilogy. I take it none of these films have any real connection to each other, so...
No, not really. There's the only thing connecting any of them is James Duval plays the main character in each of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But aside from that, there's no connection. Yeah.
All right. I was going to ask, so now you're saying it was a satire. Is it meant to be? I was so confused. Maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much, because I wasn't sure whether or not Gregg Araki was trying to like do what Harmony Korine done with something like Spring Breakers, where he was showing this world, and he was making fun of it, but at the same time there was like a meaning that you could derive from it, and it was quite like, I found Spring Breakers really emotional when there was a montage of like Selena Gomez talking about how her life's changed. So that was like, you know, on the one hand it was making fun of it, but also it was also saying this has real meaning to it. Is that what he was trying to do, or was it something I just completely missed?
Yeah, pretty much. It's as much as a satire as it is an ode to that kind of culture as well, because he was part of that.
Right.
You know, it's like a kind of ode to like being a young person in a very kind of like LA state of mind and kind of being lost to the wind. But also it's a critique of that and a critique of how we view it as well.
Cool.
Yeah. And Callum?
See me, like I was thinking out throughout this, when I was in high school, I was very kind of into 90s things, even though 90s things weren't cool like they are now. 80s things were cool then, and I, being the contrarian that I was, wanted nothing to do with it. So I watched all these various 90s indie films, like, you know, I was into your Clerks and your Richard Linklater's early stuff and all sorts of other things that hopefully we'll cover in the podcast in the near future. And I was just thinking, and I just, you know, I love the aesthetic, I love the music, I loved all that stuff. Now, something I look back and I think, it's not really as good as I remember it. I think if I was 16, 17, 18, I'd have probably loved this film, knowing what I was into. But
I think the same way if I was like 15.
What are you talking about? You're still that age.
If I was 15 and I saw this film, I'd think, holy fuck, this is like the coolest thing. If it felt to me when I was watching it, not knowing that it was supposed to be a satire, it felt like some wee guy for the West End of Glasgow's vision of what is fucking cool, you know?
Yeah.
I thought personally,
You're Simon, basically.
I personally thought it was quite obvious it was satirical because it seemed so ridiculous. Like, he's not trying to make you suspend any disbelief with this. Like, if you look at it just with a head-on perspective, I personally think it's just kind of almost a bit too blatantly satirical.
Yeah, because I thought, oh, some of these lines, God, you know, like all the various insults that what's his name, James Duval's character, Dark, kept throwing at his what was her name, Lucifer, right?
Yeah,
calling her a fart burger or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is so overwritten. But then as it went on, I thought, okay, this is meant to be as over the top as it can be. So I kind of lightened up a bit.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be taken seriously.
Nah.
I was never taking it seriously as much as I was wanting to go along for the ride, and I just wasn't up for the ride after the alien scene. I do want to jump into the alien scene because I just want to know what you guys think of that.
Which part? Like,
this the alien in general, does it represent something? Is it some metaphor, or is it just not to be taken seriously at all?
I have something to say on this. I think, to be honest, by the point that the alien came in, I was already thinking, okay, like the alien didn't really affect. I thought, okay, this is meant to be zany and kind of off the wall, so you know, I mean, the alien being thrown into the mix just didn't really change my opinion of the film to any great degree. I think that what was I trying to say? No, I mean, the first time I saw the alien, I thought it was meant to be like a drugged up hallucination, but then it plays much heavily into the plot later. So, I mean, the film didn't have a plot, and kind of everything was going in so many different directions that throwing the alien into the mix didn't really make me think any better or worse of the film. So, it's fine.
Honestly, the alien is like, I feel on one hand it's like, it is called the Teen Apocalypse trilogy, and it is supposed to, tie that into that. On one half, I do feel like it's a kind of half-witted way of tying it all in, because without it, it's just a teen satire on its own. It doesn't really, apart from like aesthetical choices, doesn't really tie in. I mean, neither do the other two, but there is a sense of dread in the other two at least. Whereas this, there's no real stakes because, again, the lack of a plot. But on the other hand, it is like, I guess, it represents something, but I'm not sure what it is yet. Even like I think the first time I watched this was about 2 years ago, and I'm still not sure what it represents. He brings up the same alien caricature thing in the TV show that he made, and it basically just is kind of, I don't know, it just triggers the plot, and is like just like the world's ending, and that's what the alien represents, but no one else can see it other than the main character. So that might be a better explanation than what we're given in this. But as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of jarring.
Yeah, we're probably not meant to understand or look into the fact that there's an alien going about, but I couldn't help but wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not meant. I mean, it's obviously like, you know, it looks like an outfit from like 1960s Star Trek. Like, it's not meant. It's meant to be kitschy and zany and that. So it's not meant to be taken seriously. Like, I don't think there's any real statement. Speaking on the other films, again, I've not seen any of them.
Yeah.
I know that the Doom Generation, the second one, didn't get very good reviews. That's how I kind of became aware of the trilogy. Yeah. Are they tonally the same? Are they quite sort of dark satires?
I mean, to a certain extent, they all exist on a level of dark comedy, but the first one kind of plays out as a kind of like amateur film and a kind of ode to very early queer like cinema, and it's supposed to be about these young queer people kind of navigating America with a camcorder basically. And then the second one is like this kind of like Thelma and Louise kind of getaway cowboy story that just doesn't translate very well. I would say it's the weakest out of the trilogy. And I mean, out of the three of them, it feels like the most coherent film, but in terms of quality, it's a lot lower. And just, I don't know. That's all I've got to say on it, really. It's quite gratuitous.
What with the sex and stuff?
Yeah, and it's very violent, but in a kind of the way you can tell it's supposed to be stylized, but the way he just hasn't adapted it very well, so it just comes off as quite garish and not really there, like properly. Like it doesn't translate well.
Yeah. Like that's, speaking of garish, like with the whole aesthetic, especially the clothes, the writing, just the whole style of it, I just thought, God, the 90s, this is so 90s. It's giving me a sore head. It's almost like a spoof of the 90s. Like, you know what I mean?
It is.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a contemporary spoof of the 90s as opposed to a one after the fact. So
maybe, Callum, you could speak on this. Because I was not alive in the 90s. So is this supposed to be like characters that would just never exist in the 90s? Or are these supposed to be kind of like, you know, now the way in like Slacker, where some of the characters are a bit oddballish, but they're still, you know, realistic, you believe them. Is that I went into it with that mindset. So is it not supposed to be that way? Did you know many people in the 90s like that?
Well, I mean, I was 9 when I was 9 when the 8. Sorry, I should say, when the 90s ended. So
Ah,
I wasn't moving in these types of circles.
Hey,
Do you know what? I think a problem with a lot of 90s films, especially the kind of indie ones, is that, you know, they're a bit over. They go for that kind of pseudo pop site philosophy type things. Everyone's talking about. I'm sorry, somebody's just come in. Everybody's talking about issues. I mean, Trainspotting's probably the best representation. Everybody's a philosopher, and but now when I look back at it, I thought, you know what? If anybody actually really spoke like that, you just think they were an absolute wank.
yeah.
But here's the thing, right? Indie films, like indie comedies of the aughts or the noughties or the 2000s, whatever you want to call it, the aesthetic of that was everything's a bit 80s looking. There's all that twiddly twee folky ukulele music. All the titles are hand drawn, like, you know, Napoleon Dynamite or Juno. What do indie comedies of the last 10 years, what's been the aesthetic of them? I couldn't tell you.
Good question. Simon?
I don't know. I don't watch a lot of indie comedies. At least I don't think I do.
I do, and it's big on sentimentality. That's like the key, but I guess that's always been the key for romantic comedies, but especially in the last 10 years or so, you've got like proper fucking every party. It's like, see the ending of When Harry Met Sally, when he's running towards her. He has to make it before the night's fucking ended so he can tell her he loves her or whatever. That's literally like what every fucking rom-com's like, but it's like all the time. It's this total sentimentality, like I fucking love you, blah blah blah. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, but I mean specifically the ones of this sort of indie sort of thing, like, you know, like when I was talking about the aughts, I was talking about things like Napoleon Dynamite or Juno or Eagle versus Shark, you know, those type of films.
Well,
Like,
in the early 2010s, it was very much still quite similar to that, with like Perks
yeah,
of Being a Wallflower, but it did have an emphasis on sentiment as well. But it was
yeah,
all kind of like hand drawn, kind of like cassette player, The
yeah.
Smiths,
I'll
you
get,
know.
yeah. It still had that kind of. It was still going for that sort of quasi 80s thing. We're saying the last
Yeah,
5 years then.
yeah, Perks of Being a Wallflower was written in the I think it was the early 90s though, so the book was written kind of around about the time period that the aesthetic kind of matches to, but in that kind of faux sense of it, and not that it's not really authentic.
Yeah,
Because it could be, yeah, because it feels kind of like it's quite undateable, but at the same time it's like that kind of pretentious kind of vintage shit.
Well, those movies, like, on you go.
I was going to say, yeah, they all have that kind of, you know, everything. They go into people's houses and it's all old wallpaper, and everyone's wearing jumpers with kittens on them, or knitwear, or I mean, Napoleon Dynamite's probably the best example of that, where it looks like the 80s, but it's not actually set in the 80s. The thing about 90s indie films is it's kind of hard to describe. There wasn't a lot of camera movement. I feel like there's a lot of static shots, so it's just people in shot talking to each other, if you know what I mean. I don't know, I'd have to go back and think about this. I feel like there's a long discussion to be had about this, and we're kind of getting off topic of the film. So, Simon, if you can bring us to your next bullet point.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion though, and we should definitely continue it another time. So, kind of touching on like the plot or lack of therefore in this instance, how did we feel about
that? When loads and loads of characters started getting introduced, it got a bit hard to tell who was who and what their relationship was with the other people. And I got a bit annoyed when, right, when's the plot going to move forward? And then I realised, all right, it's one of these films. So I just kind of sat back and just took everything in as it came. So I suppose because we didn't stick, there were so many people involved, and we didn't stick with a lot of people, especially the James Duval and Rachel Drew's characters for such a long time. It made it a bit difficult for me to be engaged by their storylines. Because I mean, there was a plot. It's just like there was kind of lots of different plots, and because none of them I found particularly compelling anyway. So
yeah.
I mean, they all tied up with each other, but
what you were saying about it being some of the characters not being very compelling, I would say that what kind of didn't ruin it for me, but I kind of had a gripe with the fact that some of the characters I found way more interesting than others. Like the couple that just shag all the time, like the roller girl, I forget her name, Heather something maybe.
Heather Graham and Ryan Felipe.
Yeah, like who gives a fuck about these two characters, and you have to sit and watch them like get off of each other for the next like 5 minutes, and then there's like who else?
They
Bart.
seem like the most superfluous.
Yeah, I didn't give a fuck about Bart as well, or the two dominatrix girls. Like when I was watching it, I was like, is this supposed to be? Obviously, I know now it's a satire, but I thought, is this what this guy thinks is like proper fucking punk and like revolutionary? Is like smackheads and dominatrix girls and people that shag all the time? Is it? I'm just about like, who gives a fuck?
It was the 90s, man. It was the aesthetic of the day.
I feel
to be honest, it's the aesthetic right now as well. So
yeah, but
everything repeats itself.
It's no punk to have all this shit because it's been around since the 60s.
I know. Maybe I'm just getting at that age now, but I just think, weird sex isn't really that shocking or particularly interesting these days.
Yeah,
it's just a little bit like, look at us, we're so outrageous.
Yeah,
well, that's the point he's trying to make, there's this whole kind of like everything's so sexualized to the point where it becomes to the point where actual like sex is becoming unsexualized in the media. And the point he's trying to make with that kind of like overly explicit, gratuitous kind of nonsense is that it's so desensitizing and so removed from reality, and how that is like kind of pushed on to younger people through the media, and it did kind of start in the 90s, or at least that's what I think he's trying to do with it.
I think the late 80s is probably more when that kind of thing started. If you look at a lot of sort of daytime talk shows, they became more and more kind of tabloidy, and they had things, a woman when her daughter coming on and saying, my daughter's a punk and it's ruining her and it's ruining this family, that kind of stuff, which you look back and says, and you think, who fucking cares?
I think I appreciate the movie a lot more knowing now that it's a satire and he's actually making fun of these things, because when I was watching it I was thinking, this guy must think he's so fucking cool making a movie about like sex and drugs, and I wouldn't. What kind of music was it? It was like, I wasn't that into the soundtrack, but it was like some emo, some punk, some riot girl.
No emo. It was more kind of, I would say it's more kind of 90s alternative rock, a bit of techno and dance, and I'm thinking some kind of metal thrown in as well.
Oh yeah, sure.
I like the soundtrack, but then again, I like music from the era. Like there's a Blur song at one point, and I remember there was the bit where they actually arrive at the party was Trash by Suede, however you want to say it.
I thought Kathleen Hanna was in this film. Like, who is it? What's her name again? Dingbat. I thought that was Kathleen Hanna for like Rebel Girl. Fucking what's that band? Bikini Kill.
Christina Applegate.
Bikini Kill.
Yeah, they've also got a Bikini Kill sticker on the car.
Yeah.
It was good seeing. It was interesting seeing all these actors. Some of them who are still here. Some of them who just were kind of indie actors in the 90s, and some of them who was just like it's Heather Graham, Ryan Felipe, who I think Justin Timberlake still his career. Who else? Rosario? No, I was about to say Rosario Dawson. What's her name? She's got a shaved head now. She's been in the press over the last few years for other reasons. Rachel. Rose McGowan.
Rose McGowan.
There was a lot of cameos by various actors. Beverly D'Angelo. I realised that's kind of a thing with Gregg Araki having loads of different cameos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing so many different people. Denise Richards,
Yeah.
very briefly.
Sure,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Can I just touch on one thing then? So see, the fact that I thought that this wasn't a satire is probably due to I went on Letterboxd right after watching this movie, and one of the first review is this is a quote. The aesthetic of this movie is basically, what if Tumblr was actually cool? And I know it sounds lame, but it's actually cool. Like, that's maybe why I thought that this wasn't a satire.
Why on earth did you look at letterbox reviews?
Who writes letterbox reviews? He's a contributor to the letterbox community.
Oh God, Daniel.
I'm not. He's making a joke, Simon. I'm not, but I do like that app, so I can like log all the films I've seen.
Uh-huh.
I do like some letterbox reviews. Like, I mean, obviously it's by people.
Yeah.
It's a redundant statement. Obviously it's by people, but you know what I mean. I use letterbox sometimes.
Those
Okay.
without
I use it.
backslash.
I use it to make lists.
You
But
make
I don't
it sound
really
like it's
interact.
Yelp.
It is kind of Yelp for movies.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I just I've completely lost track of what I was going to say there, but yeah, I don't know. For me personally, I find it kind of better to not influence my opinion with like reviews before, because like, and I know it's hard to like avoid that, but like I've like misinterpreted so many films by just like hearing someone else's opinion and then being like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense, and you have to like figure it out after again.
I'm quite bad for that, to be honest. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that I dive deep into that. It was just like a wee glance. It's literally a wee sentence. So I read that.
But that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It puts that doubt in your mind or something, and then you're like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense, and you start double guessing yourself. I know I do that a lot with like kind of like Christopher Nolan films, especially because I miss so much of the dialogue in them. Like if I see them in the cinema, because I can't really hear anything, so it takes me a while to like, because it's like, oh yeah, I understand this concept, and then there like something contradicts it, but it's not actually contradicting it. It just misheard it because I can't fucking hear what anyone is saying, and then I look online and it confuses me more.
I know, and that's like the best bit about art is the fact that you can derive your own meaning from it. You know, that's what I love it so much. So I'm being a fucking hypocrite by like reading that review there.
I mean, it depends, but if it's got a very specific meaning, then because you can go too far one way. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the film If, Lindsay Anderson, the film from 1968.
No. With Michael McDowell?
Malcolm McDowell. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, we've got 6 minutes left, by the way.
Yeah, well, just to make a point, the film is both in colour and in black and white, and some scenes are in colour and some in black and white, and a lot of reviewers at the time thought this was brilliant, and you know what I mean, this was making some statement about whatever the fuck they thought it was, and the truth is they just ran out of colour film, so they had to shoot a lot of the scenes in black and white. Like, so I think being too interpretive of your reviews can go too far. I mean,
but even though there's a practical reason behind that, and there's a literal, like, genuine reasoning behind that, and that exists out with like creative decisions. If it means something else to you, and it like it changes the way you look at the film, and it like represents something because of that, even if it's not intended to, I think you can still have that meaning to yourself, and still view it in such a way, because it still exists in that form. And if that changes how you see it because of they ran out of color film, like that meaning that you derive from that can still exist in your own world.
Yes, I suppose, but that would kind of suggest to me the type of person who overanalyzes things.
We all overanalyze things.
Oh. Right. Sorry, go on, Daniel.
Just the one last point. I think it depends on who's opinion you're taking on. If you're taking on some reviewer from the New Yorker or something like that, taking his opinion on about the film, then it's a bit different to us having a discussion about it, because you know, you don't know this fucking guy that's making this review, so maybe that's got something to do with it.
Yeah.
I actually did read some contemporary reviews of the film. The film seemed to get fairly good reviews for when it came out. I can't remember who it was. This is some American paper called it. It's like the Californian Kids, and it's not really like kids at all.
No,
I mean,
no.
shows young people. In fact, that's the thing. Most of them aren't even teenagers in this film. They're like in their 20s. And
Yeah,
Rachel
early
True
20s.
was like 32, but if you see her today, like, she still looks the same. She has aged very well, that woman.
Yeah, on that, maybe it is like the fucking California Kids, and the fact that it is satirical and it's like over the top and not realistic at all, the way fucking Los Angeles and Hollywood is. You know, maybe it is, because New York's obviously very gritty and grimy, blah blah blah, and this is like the complete opposite because it's LA, kind of like New York and LA.
I mean, there's grit and grime in LA. I mean,
sure,
I think
that's not represented in media.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Depends.
We're given the delusion that this is like fucking, you know,
Tinseltown.
Yeah, Tinseltown. When it's not, it's, you know, it's a place like anywhere else.
Yeah.
But because of you know, the people that live there, we're like fed this idea that it's something, you know, so far removed from normal day living. It doesn't have any grit or, you know, jagged ends.
Yeah, even the characters in it, the characters in Nowhere are trying to be very like punk, but the characters and kids are way more punk because it's not fucking LA, you know, and that's kind of what makes it an LA film.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if punk is quite the right word. I mean, it's just that, you know, it's just that aesthetic 90s alternative rave, grunge. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I thought this film's trying too hard to be cool, but then again, maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
I think it is,
It kind of, at first I felt this is like a 90s Skins, and
oh god,
I could talk for an hour about how much I don't like Skins, but save that for another podcast.
There's more. So like the editing was so fucking choppy and chaotic. I hated it.
Headache inducing.
I don't know if you picked up on that, like how choppy each scene was. It was like watching like a Lars von Trier film or something like that.
I've yet to watch any Lars von Trier film, so I cannot possibly comment on that. Any, I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest.
Well, Lars von Trier film, I don't know, mate. Aye, that's beside the point. Anyway, I'll send you a recommendation. But the editing was like really choppy to the point where I was just like taken out yet, and I was like discombobulated. But I don't know if that was an intention to make it kind of chaotic, like the film is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to match the kind of tone of the overall thing, but it also kind of shows like this is quite early in his work.
Yeah,
his third film.
Yeah. Yeah,
actually, had he made films before the first Teen Apocalypse film?
Pardon?
Had he made anything before the Teen Apocalypse trilogy?
I believe like kind of amateur student films, but nothing kind of like this was like his first three kind of major pieces, and the first one is very studenty. So
yeah.
The cowboy and what's the main character's name again? Dark. What was the handshake?
Dark.
Now they do a wee handshake at the start of the movie in the cafe.
I think, was it meant to be like a hang 10 thing? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just a handshake, man.
But I didn't really get. I just thought this is another 90s-ism that I've forgotten about.
Right.
like cowabunga, saying cowabunga. That's what we all said back then. Yeah.
Fucking class.
Yeah.
There's also a really good sex scene with what's his name, Elvis, and I forget the girl's name, the small one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've forgotten her name as well.
There's a book, I think it's a Nietzsche book that's sitting on the couch, and then it cuts to them going mummy and daddy and like sex voices when they're having sex. I thought that was really smart and funny.
See, it kept cutting to another. The people saying mummy and daddy. But I can't remember which was it. It kept cutting back to another couple having sex. Who was
Yeah,
that?
it was her twin, I believe.
Oh, was that? So that was Ryan Felipe.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so
And
that
Emma
adds
Graham.
more to the Nietzsche because it's like all about the family. Fuck. Wow.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a few characters I got mixed up in terms of the name. I thought because they were introduced in the same scene, I couldn't tell which one was Handjob and which one was Brad. Was it Brad? No, Bart.
Bart.
Yeah.
But to be honest, well, that's kind of incidental, like their characters. Can we just talk about the main plot as the relationship between James Duval and Rachel True? So he has gay feelings. They're in a sort of, she's bisexual. You know what I mean? He has although he never expresses it outright, but he fantasizes about Montgomery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I'm from a different generation. So my word choice might be a bit iffy.
Sorry.
Continue.
So he's in a polyamorous relationship with, what is Rachel True's character called? He's called Dark. She's called...
Oh, fuck. What is her name?
She's called Mel.
Mel, yeah.
Yeah. With another lassie called Lucifer, who...
Yeah.
Lucifer and Dark, they give each other pelters throughout the film. So basically, he wants more commitment. He wants it to just be them. He wants monogamy between the two of them. She's not really up for that, and so that kind of creates the. I don't know. Were we supposed to be invested in this?
I think so.
Well, it's just part of the critique, really, about how kind of like frivolous young lovers and stuff.
Yeah, because
that in itself is very Araki to like the core as well. It's just to him being kind of, I don't know, just like that, I guess.
A fair few parties I've attended over the last 6 months, pre-lockdown, just so you know, I've not been breaking the law. I find a lot of people having discussions about polyamorous relationships, and I just I don't know, I just find the subject so uninteresting. Like, especially, I don't know. It all kind of comes full circle with him and Montgomery, who he gets into bed with at the end, who he fantasizes about. Throughout the entire film, he wants his girlfriend to just be.
Yeah, well, there's a level of hypocrisy there, and that's the point.
Yeah.
No, he's like, oh, I want to be in this monogamous relationship with my loving girlfriend. I hate that she gets with other people. But then on the other side, he's like, well, I benefit from this being a polyamorous relationship because I fancy this guy.
What's just that interests you two, what is your take on polyamory?
What? Sorry, what's it called?
Polyamory.
Okay. I'd say, just from my current personal standings, I wouldn't like to be in a relationship where another girl, where the girl is seen with seeing other boys or girls. However, and that's because I don't want a relationship. But in the future, let's just say I'm married and shit like that, I'd want to be monogamous, I think. But then again, I'm fucking 19. Actually, I'm 20.
Yeah.
Fuck. I don't, but...
when was your birthday?
It was like a couple of weeks ago. Not enough about that. Simon, what do you think?
You're already forgetting things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm pretty much the same. I'm just, I'm 19 and not really thinking about it right now. I'm just kind of vibing out, I guess.
As much as you can under these conditions.
Yeah, much you can during a lockdown.
I think.
Yeah, I don't really have any opinions on it, like at all, to be honest. It's not what I was thinking about.
I think the idea appealed to me when I was younger, but now that I'm approaching 30, like I can't really be arsed with any of that. And also, I feel like the problem is you know, eventually one party is going to want the other party's full attention, and if the other party still wants to see other people, then
Yeah, that's
it's
it.
not really it's not really sustainable, is it? That's my whole thing. Sometimes I think, you know, there's a reason things tend to come in pairs, even numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
You could
that's
have the
why
exact same argument about things come in threes, though. It doesn't. Like, I
things.
understand
Yeah,
your
but
critique of polyamory, but that argument doesn't really work.
Yeah. I don't think
bad news comes in threes. That's the only thing I can think it comes in threes.
Yeah, but then you can look at it for the position of like fucking, all right, these they might not work out, but also like getting married to someone and staying with them for the next 60 years, like fucking most of that marriages end in divorce anyway. So maybe maybe it's a good fucking idea to try that out.
I mean, if it floats your boat, go for it. But yeah, I don't know. I just find the whole, like I said, I've just been in the company of people who talk about this stuff endlessly. So just maybe that's biased me against the film, but just having this be a plot thread throughout it just made me think, I'm too old for this shit. I don't know. Like, I found. Well, here's the point: all the characters in it are pretty shallow. They're very one-dimensional in their pursuits,
Yeah.
and I know they're meant to be teenagers, and it's what young people are supposed to be like anyway. Pretty much are. Let's be honest. But he's
Okay,
off. Let's be fair. I was.
What, sorry?
One-dimensional, shallow and one-dimensional.
He's slagging us off.
I know.
I'd say I have like maybe two, to be fair to me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did any of you think? I mean, I know I kind of brought up the whole Bill and Ted thing. This is what made me think: is this deliberately meant to be daft? As soon as James DeVille's character started speaking, the way he spoke, it was like such an exaggerated version of what a California teenager, like I said, it was like, I mean, he even looks a bit like Keanu Reeves with his long dark hair. Like
a better looking version, I should add.
You reckon?
Yeah. Like
really?
He's all right. Like, I don't think he's. I mean, Keanu Reeves. I think age is starting to catch up with Keanu Reeves.
Do not even brush on that right now. Keanu Reeves is a legend, and I won't hear it.
I'm so fucking over Keanu Reeves. Like, what's the big deal with the guy?
For fuck's sake.
He's a nice guy. That's apparently it.
He's a break.
I mean, he hasn't been in a brilliant film for quite some time. Let's be fair.
John Wick.
I mean, the John Wick films are good. Like, as action thrillers go. Well, action films. They're not thrillers.
Yeah, I mean...
The fight scenes are well choreographed.
I think after the Matrix films, I think everybody just seen him as the guy who's the very wooden actor. I don't know if...
He's not wooden, though. You ever seen Mad Private Idaho?
No, and I'd like to see it.
Yeah, he's not wooden in that. It's an incredibly emotive performance with him and River.
I don't know. It just seems like every film I've ever seen him in, at some point he goes, whoa. He even said that in a...
Stop slagging Keanu. I mean...
Yes, he's a nice boy.
He's great. It's just, it's got good vibes, man.
Well, I heard like charity, doesn't he? And he didn't tell anyone that he donated like however much money to charity. So fair play the boy.
No.
Did he boast about not boasting about charity?
I was about to be like, how did you find that
out? Probably some like tabloid picked up or something like that. I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Simon, I was going to say, so
yeah.
I was kind of holding off of making us watch very harsh or grim films, and I'm not saying this is really a harsh or a grim film, but this is the first film we've watched so far where rape has been used as a plot device.
Yeah. God.
Yeah.
And drugs. That was also used as like a plot device.
Yeah.
It was a bit fucking.
Yeah.
What do you think the reason for having both the rape scene and also the smackhead like be parts of it? And also, I guess you could count the murder in with that as well, with the soup, the tomato soup.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So what is the
mean,
point?
Yeah,
On one
that's
part,
the question.
yeah,
What's the
it
point,
is.
Simon?
Yeah, it is like, you know, partly naivety. I think it those things don't really hold up with a kind of more, I don't know, with an audience from this, like from for now, because it is quite dated in that retrospective, that kind of level of shock value for something. Because I feel like that is just, I don't know, I found it unnecessary.
I don't know. Like, amongst a certain type of young person, like I could I could see all the themes being touched on in this as being very like I'm not saying it's done in a bit particularly subtle or graceful way, but I mean, yeah, that's just what I think. Right, let's just think of what's all the topics with teen angst, eating
Yeah.
disorders, sex,
Yeah.
rape, drug addiction, all that stuff. Just throw it all in there. All these things that young people get up to that we're all supposed to be horrified by.
Well, it's kind of it's a bit strange the fact that
Kind of bashes you over the head with it.
Yeah, but and then the only other Gregg Araki film that I've seen is Mysterious Skin, and the way that that deals with like sexual abuse is like probably the most like tender and fucking gracious way you could deal with it, like in any film ever, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I'd still
that
like
is
to see that.
it's very kind of like it juxtaposes Mysterious Skin like so much. Like it's
Literally,
almost kind of
yeah.
baffling it's the same person, because like the way it's done in Nowhere is so far removed from like any like kind of just subtlety
Yeah.
or like kind of sensibility around it, whereas in Mysterious Skin it's like, it's so well thought out and so well portrayed. It's just kind of like, how is this the same guy, but it carries the theme of the rest of the film, where it is kind of over the top to a certain extent and very much in your face, and it is part of like the satire and the critique of that culture and stuff. But yeah, it is quite, for a film that is quite easily digestible if grating at times, it stands out as being very uncomfortable to watch.
I mean, I suppose that was its intention, but
Yeah.
like see the actor who played and he's only called the teen idol. He looks familiar, but then I looked him up, and I don't actually. The thing he's most famous for is being in Baywatch. So
Yeah.
he kind of looked like a sort of a combination of Rob Lowe and Channing Tatum, of that kind of generic Hollywood handsome guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got that face
Which
of
is
it.
precisely, which was precisely what he was meant to be.
Yeah.
One thing
So I suppose
I
that
do
works
like.
out quite well.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Callum. One thing I do like about the character is how he's an actor, and he talks about how much he hates like Hollywood and he hates all this like shit that comes with being an actor. Then in the very next scene that you see him in, he like starts talking to the fucking, I forget her name for some reason, sorry, but Roller Girl.
Egg.
Not Egg, that's who it is, not Roller Girl. They start talking about high school. Then she quickly diverts the conversation back to what it's like to be an actor. Because I know a fucking couple of actors that are like that. They pretend to hate the whole glitz and glamour at all, but it's all they fucking talk about.
Yeah.
What actors do you know that are involved in glitz and glamour?
I can't mention names. Brad Pitt. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually liked the sort of scene up until his true intentions revealed. I actually quite liked the scenes between them. I thought it was quite believably sweet.
Yeah,
So I suppose that was effective.
Yeah, I agree, because it does feel like a quite nice break from like the kind of loudness of everything else. So when his true intentions are revealed, you are like as shocked and horrified as she is, and that's kind of the point. But it's like, dude, that's a lot.
Well, maybe that's why the rape scene happens, is because the way it's like more of a romantic comedy, the way they're walking beside the lake, And it's all romantic.
Yeah, it's
very
you know,
dark.
it's part of the satire and stuff,
It's-
but it's just you know,
It's called the juxtaposition.
yeah, it's just
And the fact that those guys in those romantic comedies that are proper like, oh, I'm just gonna fucking sweep you away because, you know, this isn't about feminism, this is about me protecting you, blah blah blah. Maybe because if those fucking guys existed in rom-coms, they would be pure abusers.
Well, yeah.
Jesus.
Okay.
Do you get my point, or am I not
I haven't
explaining that
watched a
well?
rom-com in a while. I don't know, like, what you mean, the sort of, the overly the overly
I mean, I
sort of
like
chivalrous people would be abusers.
I agree with you that the rom-com genre as a whole is quite misogynistic, and like how certain like, you know, a lot of like these so-called desirable male characters are actually like, you like when you know them in real life and you know like people like them, you know they're pieces of shit, but like
Yeah.
abusers.
Say Hugh Grant. Is Hugh Grant a piece of shit?
It's like Hugh Grant, not Hugh Grant of him.
Well, like that's why.
Apart from in a very English scandal.
Yeah, that's why I fucking love Punch Drunk Love, because it's the woman that decides to go after the guy, and there's a bit that's it's just kind of less threatening and more kind of like lovable.
That's how it is, but that's kind of how it is in real life. But it's when it comes to sort of first impressions, the man has to do most of the work. You know, he has to approach the woman. I'm not saying he has to, but that's usually how it works. That's just the way. I don't know. Seems to be these are just the mating rituals of our species. You know.
Yeah.
Simon, if you'd like to interject and tell me how I've got it all wrong.
I mean,
No.
that's your own personal experience. I can't dispute your own personal experience, man.
I felt
it's most people's, but isn't it?
I can actually speak to this because last night I asked a girl to like see a girl that I knew from seeing her at one specific place that I go to quite often. So and then I asked her last night if we were having some flirting. No, it's a place. It's the cinema, right? I've been going to the cinema. I've been like seeing this girl, and I thought that I was flirting with her. So my last night, I was like, "Oh, maybe I could see you outside this place," and she's like, "No, I've got a boyfriend," and I was like, "Fucking cringing." My soul like fucking pushed into like a wee paper fucking rolled up ball, you know?
Yeah.
Christ.
I know, I was shite. Fucking.
That's
plenty more than the sea.
At least you asked.
Enough cliches.
Well, I've had this conversation before. My friends actually told me not to do it because, you know, she was at her work, so it's a bit like, well, don't fucking bother the girl at her work, you know? So maybe they were right.
You didn't say she was at her work when you started this story.
Oh yeah, that's.
I mean, if she wasn't at her work, she'd probably still tell you she had a boyfriend.
That's true, and also she'd finished work, so it wasn't like, you know. But enough about me and my dating life, God.
No. Yeah, like the last 10 minutes of conversation have nothing to do with this film. Yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot I can say more about the film. I
feel like
it's just,
you know,
I think it's just very of its time, and it's not aged well in a lot of ways. And I know it's satirical and it's kind of meant to be over the top, but I just found it a wee bit too obnoxious and invested in its own style for its own good.
Some good one-liners, though.
Some.
Thanks for the bitching wheels, bitch.
I feel like you have to go into it with a certain mindset of kind of just like not expecting anything from it, because in reality you're not going to get much from it, because that's the point. And like if you go in expecting like a kind of like, you know, a classic, you're not going to get it, because it's a kind of quite roughly cut 90s satire about Californian kids and how they're represented in the media. So
yeah.
What is it Biggie says? California knows how to party.
Jesus Christ.
I am joking.
Right, that's the last Biggie and Tupac reference on this podcast, man.
That's like only the second one.
No, it's the third. I've done it in
That's the
every
third.
Oh
You've said up
God.
there with Biggie. You've said up there with Biggie and Tupac.
twice.
I can say with some confidence that they're down below.
Oh, what? Oh,
yes.
controversial.
Terrible.
They did not live honourable lives, those men.
Oh,
yeah.
Well.
Jesus.
If you like Biggie and Tupac, by the way, viewers, if you like Biggie and Tupac, don't pay no attention to me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Viewer.
And if Biggie and Tupac are listening and are still alive somewhere,
yeah, in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
They're tuning in every week.
Eat my Bermuda Triangle, as Lucifer says.
So, Simon, give us your final thoughts on this. I mean, you already have sort of, but if you can sum it up in a sentence.
I don't know. It's definitely of its time. But it's still, I feel like it's quite an interesting insight to a kind of outside perspective of the 90s while existing within the 90s. And as someone who wasn't alive back then, it was quite interesting to see from a queer perspective, especially when so many kind of like films like of that kind of like level are so kind of just straight washed.
Surface level.
Yeah.
Straight washed.
You know. So it's interesting to see, and it's visually I think it's great. And it's a really interesting kind of push-off point for the rest of his career.
What's your favourite queer film?
God. 1 second, sorry.
Mine's is Call Me By Your Name. I think someone's entered the room. Callum, have you got a favourite queer film?
I mean, to be honest, does a queer film just be anything that focuses on a gay or queer character?
Yeah.
Yeah, even before that term was popular. I like The Naked Civil Servant.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I was going to...
Hi, sorry.
Just to ask about that, like the sexuality side of it, like because there were so many characters in this film, and there was all these various storylines. I mean, did the sexuality of James Duval and Rachel True and whoever played Montgomery, like that really didn't feel like it was a massive part, because obviously there was so much going on in this film. Nothing seemed that massive.
Well, that's the point. It puts it to the kind of back burner. Because it's not that important at the end of the day. And to answer your question,
can it be called a queer? So can it really be called a queer film?
It's from a queer perspective. It's Gregg Araki is a gay man, so it's from that lens. It's not from a heterosexual man's perspective of this world. So that inherently changes things. Oh, and my favourite queer film is My Own Private Idaho.
Right. Well, the other thing
does it inherently change things?
I don't know. I don't know, because Moonlight by Barry Jenkins is about like the growth of a gay guy growing up in a black community and like the hood, whatever you want to call it. But that Barry Jenkins is great.
Black people live in the hoods.
I live in a scheme. I'm not trying to be offensive. I don't know what other.
Yes, it's about a young gay black man growing up in an impoverished black community.
Yeah, sure. So I'm allowed to say scheme. Can I say scheme then?
Yeah. You live in a scheme, so you can say scheme.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm only noising you up, mate.
No, I know, but you never know who's listening. You know, Callum.
Biggie Tupac, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Simon, I was going to actually bring that back when you said because it's from the perspective of a gay man as opposed to a heterosexual man, that completely changes the perspective. Or
well, it does because I think it does.
Really? Because I mean,
it gives it a different perspective. Everyone has a different perspective, no matter anything. I mean, and then adding on life experiences that change your quality of life, it's going to change the perspective. and it's interesting.
I mean, to be honest, if every character in this film was heterosexual, would the film be so inherently different? It would still, you could still tell the exact same story with the same characters and have all the same kind of qualities. Like, I mean, it doesn't really add any. It didn't seem to add any kind of layers to it.
Yeah,
And I
that's the point.
realised a straight person would
Yeah,
be like. I realised, especially back then, I realised a straight person would maybe not have the, what do you call it? A straight.
But it's the fact. It's the fact that it doesn't matter that is kind of why it's from a queer perspective. If those characters were implemented by a straight person, there would probably be more weight to like their sexuality background. Whether in this it's not, because it's not important. That's what I mean.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Callum, what are your final thoughts on the film?
Yeah.
I think I've kind of just said it already. Like, it's very of its time. It's well made. I like the aesthetic of the film, even though, like I said, it is a very of its time film. But I just kind of found it a bit too obnoxious to really enjoy it. And I realise it's a satire, and it's meant to be these characters are meant to be very vapid and one-dimensional, but yeah, it was too much invested in that for it to be enjoyable for me. So it's a thumbs down from me.
Daniel, what were your last thoughts?
A lot of good and a lot of bad. I think I'm going to watch the other movies in the trilogy after this. So, you know, it couldn't have been that bad. I thought that some elements quite took me out of the film, like the alien and like the choppy editing, but I also found it really funny. So, you know, and it also fucking made me think at least. So pretty decent, probably like a 7 out of 10.
Oh, cool.
It's very generous.
Yeah.
I'm a generous guy. What can I say? I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think that's us done for this week. So, yeah, anyone got anything else to say before we wrap up?
What we doing next week?
Well, glad you asked, Cal.
What are we doing next week?
We'll do 3 Halloween-themed films for next week.
Okay, so next week we've got 3 Halloween films. Is that us?
I believe it is.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll see you all next week then.
Yep.
Yeah, see all of you next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
After.
Right,
Good
see
night.
you. Right, I'll see you.